Hi, Gary DeWall here, and this is another Bridging the Week, June 10th to 14th, and today is June 17th, 2013. Good morning, and I hope all you dads had a great Father's Day in the United States yesterday and wherever else Father's Day was celebrated. Category 2 mandatory clearing began on Monday last week, and surprise, surprise, according to a Risk Magazine article on June 12th, the volume and number of cleared US dollar interest rate swaps and credit default swap indices actually fell dramatically on Monday compared to the prior Friday, June 7th. Let's watch the long-term trend, but the short-term development seemed quite unexpected. Last week, the Chicago Board Options Exchange was sued by and settled with the SEC in connection with the SEC's claim that CBOE not only had failed to investigate a member firm's compliance with Reg Show, but also interfered with its Division of Enforcement's investigation of the same firm. Specifically, the SEC claimed that CBOE failed to fulfill its fundamental responsibilities as a self-regulatory organization and that these failures were systemic and egregious. CBOE paid a fine of $6 million and agreed to implement a number of undertakings to settle this matter. In response, Joe Cahill wrote an interesting commentary on June 12th in a blog for Crane Chicago questioning how financial markets can play beat cop to their biggest customers when such type of self-regulation would not be tolerated in any other for-profit industry. However, just the prior week at the annual Sandler O'Neill Exchange Forum in New York City, the new CEO of CBOE, Edward Tilley, seemed to play down the possibility of CBOE ever splitting off its regulatory unit. In response to the specific matter of the SEC lawsuit, CBOE said in a press release that it had conducted a rigorous self-review and has already implemented or is currently implementing all of the SEC's recommended or required actions. On Tuesday, ISDA and Futures and Options Association, based in London, published the client-cleared OTC derivatives addendum. This document is anticipated to become the market standard document for memorializing client clearing relationships between clients and their clearing firms for their cleared OTC swap transactions. Much like the ISDA and FIA cleared derivatives addendum released during August 2012, the ISDA FOA addendum is meant to amend existing client documents to allow for clearing OTC derivatives in compliance with EMIR, the European equivalent of Dodd-Frank. This week, the House of Representatives passed with bipartisan support a bill entitled the Swap Jurisdiction Certainty Act that would require the CFTC and SEC to come to a consensus on rules governing the cross-border application of Title VII of Dodd-Frank, as well as exempt from U.S. rules a foreign entity that complies with the swap rules of a jurisdiction that has one of the 9 largest combined swap and security-based swap markets, provided such jurisdiction has rules that are broadly equivalent to U.S. rules. This bill now passes on to the Senate, where it is not clear if it will even be acted on. The Obama administration opposes adoption of this bill. Also this week, Manager Futures Association filed a request with the CFTC asking for repeal of an old CFTC staff interpretation that prohibits the use of third-party custodial accounts in connection with futures accounts. Clearly, there is a lot of understandable momentum to improve customer protection measures post the demise of MF Global and Peregrine Financial Group, but it is unlikely that use of third-party custodial accounts in light of current bankruptcy law provisions would add a lot of protection for customers, but for sure would add a lot of cost to FCMs that customers would have to absorb. I did not mention last week, but on June 3rd, the ASX Group in Australia announced it had received approval from the majority of its futures clearing participants to rule amendments that will permit it to implement a new OTC derivatives clearing service for the Australian market, specifically for standardized Australian dollar-denominated interest rate swaps. This clearing service is expected to be instituted by year end. Speaking of dates, keep in mind ICE launches its credit futures today, while the CFTC cross-border exemptive relief expires now in less than 30 days on June 12th. Finally, as I wrote to him in a private note, I am not always in agreement with Commissioner Chilton's views, but his speech this week before the Institute of International Bankers here in New York City, entitled The Cinema of Uncertainty, in which he provides his views on the Volcker Rule and the Commission's December international guidance and exemptive relief, among other topics, is truly one of the most entertaining by a regulator in years. One commentator, Steve Lofty of Cadwalder, Wickersham, and Taft, counted reference to 38 movies in this presentation. This week I will be attending the FIA's annual board meeting in Washington, D.C., as well as meetings with CFTC commissioners and staff, members of Congress, and the EU ambassador to the United States. I will let you know what I learned next week. Also, beginning this week, I will include the www links to the principal matters I discussed in that week's Bridging the Week on my own website. Until next week, this is Gary DeWaal, and this is Bridging the Week.